Hi, welcome back to Chester's Book Nook, or welcome if you're new. It's time for my July wrap up. I read 14 books this month and 5 of them were from my TBR jar picks. The only one I didn't get to from the TBR jar was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and I am partway through that at the moment, so that's going to end up being finished next month. But the only reason that I didn't get to that one this month was because I decided I wanted to read Rachel Gillig's other works first. So I basically started with the Shepherd's Duology. So I read One Dark Window and I absolutely loved it. I will briefly say the plot, even though, I mean, this book's been everywhere at this point, so I won't spend too much time on it. But basically it's about a woman called Elspeth, and she has a monster known as the Nightmare living inside her head. And it's a gothic fantasy with some romance, and I've seen it described as adult, but I would say it's more on the new adult side of things, just in terms of how it's written. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I absolutely love a gothic setting for a start, and I thought that Rachel Gillig's writing was just really beautiful. I think she has a really nice writing style, and I thought it had just a really cool magic system that used cards, which is a bit different to magic systems that I've seen in other books. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and I loved the poems as well. There was constant little poems throughout, because the way that the nightmare that lives in Elspeth's head speaks is in poetry. Like, he speaks in verse, like pretty much all of the time. I just really liked the writing style, and I gave this a 4.75 out of 5. I would have preferred if it had been more adult in its writing style, but I still absolutely loved it, and I am a critical rater, so there you go. And after that, I wanted to complete the duology, so I went straight on to Two Twisted Crowns. I mean, I couldn't not do, actually, because of how she left the ending. And obviously I can't say much about that, and I also can't say too much about the plot of the second one, because naturally, with it being a sequel, it just follows on from the first one. But I will say I really enjoyed this one as well. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first one. This one came in at more of a 4.5 star for me, which is still very high. Like, I still really enjoyed it, would definitely recommend it if you're one of the few people like me that still haven't read this duology. I will say I missed Elspeth in this one a little bit. She wasn't in it as much as she was in the first one. There were 2 other characters in this one called Ione and Elm, and they really carried the second one for me. I wasn't that fussed on either of them in the first book, but absolutely loved both of them in the second one. So yeah, I read both of this on my Kindle, but I enjoyed it so much. It is one of those ones where I'm like, if I see a nice physical copy of this for a good price, I may end up getting it, because I do think I'd probably read it again in the future. Okay, and then for book 3, I read, where is it? 6 Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent, and this is part of the Crowns of Nyaxia series. So the first book in that is Serpent and the Wings of Night, which I really enjoyed, and then this is a novella which ideally should be read after that one and before The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, which is the next actual book, not a novella, in the series. I worded that wrong. You know what I mean. Anyway, I actually accidentally read this after The Star-Cursed King, but it didn't matter. So we follow Lilith in here, who is a human woman, and we kind of follow her transition and her love story with a vampire named Vale. And it's very short and sweet, because it is only a short book, but she does, like, Carissa Broadbent packs a lot into this. And it's a very sweet love story. Like, it's not considering it's about a vampire, I wouldn't say it's particularly dark. I would say that the romance in this is actually quite sweet. There are a few moments. Yeah, no, overall it's quite sweet. I really enjoyed Lilith's character, and I knew I was going to, because I'd already read The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King and liked her in that, but she's quite a minor character in that. And Lilith she's autistic coded. She has a lot of autistic traits that are clearly on display in this book. She's also like a very just analytical person, a very logical person. She struggles with people, she struggles with being misinterpreted, she's quite direct, and I like when characters have these qualities, because I guess just because I relate to them, and it's always nice to meet a character in a book that you relate to. Another thing I liked about her is that Lilith is strong, but she's not strong in that way that we get a lot in fantasies where, I don't know, you're a very small petite woman, but somehow you've just destroyed a group of 6 armed men despite having no magical powers, or you know, that kind of thing. Like, don't be wrong, there are books that I like with that kind of trope in it. It's just that it's not very grounded in in reality. And Lilith doesn't react like that. She isn't a good fighter, but she has a lot of other strengths, and she's very intelligent, and she is able to show her strength in different ways, and I really enjoyed that. And she still holds her own, just in a different way to what we're used to in a lot of books. Now, if you're looking for spice, I will say this does have spice, but not a lot. There are 1-2 spicy scenes in here, and they are shown on page. It's pretty graphic, but not too graphic, like maybe a 2 or 3 on the spice rating. It's so hard to give a spice rating, isn't it? Because what we see as spicy is probably going to be different. I will say this does fall into the trap with the male love interest in this with Vale, which it happens in a lot of contemporary books, a lot of romance books, a lot of romantasy books, where they do seem to have to be very muscly and have like the biggest aubergine, eggplant. What am I saying? You know what I mean? Like when I've spoken to women about this in real life, I've never met one who said, I insist that men that I'm with must be like this. So I find it a little bit weird how all fantasy and romance books do seem to fall into this. I would just like an average dude, you know? I want an average dude in here. I guess justice for average men and justice for overweight men. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would genuinely love to see more stories with different body types reflected, no matter what gender that you are. And I'm not slating this book specifically for this. I really enjoyed this book. I'm just saying it's in a lot of books. So that's something to be aware of if you are a bit sick of the all men are super muscly and the love interest got like a huge, you know. I didn't mean to talk about this, but you know, I've started now, so yeah, I think I'm finished. I'm finished with that. But yes, overall, I really enjoyed this. This was a solid 4 out of 5. Didn't love it quite as much as the other 2 in the series. But you know, it didn't have quite as much length, unlike the main character. Oh, I gotta move on. Gotta move on. Okay, so moving on from this one, after that I read Order of Scorpions by Ivy Asher, and that is a dark romantasy, and if you want to see my full reactions to that, please do check out my dark romantasy reading vlog. Plot-wise, we follow a woman who she wakes up, she can't remember who she is, she's been this graphic torture scenes. I will check the trigger warnings because it's got a lot of them. But yeah, she has been tortured, and then a group basically saves her. This group of assassins save her, but after saving her they do just leave her for dead. She is then picked up by a different person, and she's trained as a blade slave. So she does very much live as a slave, and she's trained to be an assassin over a number of years, and then basically they are bidded on, and she is picked up by the same group who initially both saved but also then abandoned her. This turned out to have so much more depth and complexity than I expected. I enjoyed this way more than I expected. I will say the world is very dark, and some scenes are hard to read. I can't stress enough that if there's anything that you think might trigger you, to check the trigger warnings, because it really might be in here. The heroine in this, or set, she is such a badass. I was saying in the other one how it was nice to see Lilith not have that same sort of badass quality, just because it is kind of overdone in a lot of ways, but I will say it's done really well in Order of Scorpions, and it does make sense why she's such a badass when you look at her training. So yeah, I did really enjoy it, and if you're looking for spice, whew, does this have it? This is like ghost chili pepper hot. This is so hot. This is so spicy. I mean, I was blushing reading this, and you know what? I read this on the blog as well, and I felt so weird. Honestly, it felt so weird reading this. Just like being on the camera. It's like it doesn't get really spicy at first, but later on in the book it is so spicy, and it is a why choose, so there is like a 1 woman, 3 guy situation going on, but there is also a lot of love there. Like, it's not just about the spice, and there is an excellent plot, because I do not like things that are just a lot of spice and not a good plot as well, and this isn't that. This does have a good plot too. So yeah, overall I would say this was like an easy 4.25, and yeah, I definitely recommend it if you like dark romantasies. Whew, oh boy, after that we went on to another dark romantasy, and I had high hopes for it and it did not go well. So next I read Rose in Chains by Julie Soto, and if you like seeing someone just lose their mind and just rant and kind of hate read something, then do check out the same vlog that I mentioned before. I didn't mean to. I always go into the book wanting to love it. Like, I really wanted to love this book, and I was expecting to enjoy it, and it's not like I wanted to hate read it, but I just kept going, and because I was reading it for the vlog, I felt like I should finish it when, to be honest, if I wasn't reading it for the vlog, I would have DNF'd it. And there's part of you where you think, well, maybe it gets better, maybe it redeems itself, but no, it didn't. I don't say this about many books, but I hated this book. So this started as a fanfic, and it used to be a Harry Potter fanfic. However, it's been fully kind of removed from that. It used to be called The Auction, if you want to look it up. But yeah, everything's been changed about it. Details have been changed, names have been changed, although some of them are quite similar. I mean, Hermione is now Bryony, but the characters, they seem pretty different as well. But it used to be a Hermione and Draco fanfic. This is so dark. This is way darker than I was expecting, and there's not really a lot of romance. I mean, there's just not. The world in here is absolutely brutal. It is hard to read. This is definitely one to check the trigger warnings. There were a couple of things that I found personally a little bit triggering. That didn't lower my rating or anything like that. That wasn't why I didn't like it, but I'm just warning you that there's a lot of hard themes in this and a lot of abuse, and it's an incredibly patriarchal society, like incredibly. And that's one of the problems that I had with it. Not that it was set in that world, but that it was inconsistent. The world building was inconsistent. You imagine there's this society where every single man is Andrew Tate, or worse, if you can imagine such a thing. Okay, it's just a whole world of Andrew Tates and men even worse than him. And who rules that world? It's a woman. It makes no sense at all. I couldn't get past it. Like, how would a woman have ever risen to power in this world? And that's just one of the issues that I had with it. I also found there was no chemistry between the characters. There were parts that made me feel sick reading, which is just not what I want when I'm reading a book, frankly. But yeah, I normally try and recommend books to who I think would suit them. And obviously, if you like very dark romantasy, you might enjoy this, but I honestly can't recommend this to people, because like I feel like I hate it so much on a personal level that I just can't do it. So I'm sorry, I can't. And if you like this, then you know, I feel very sorry for you. No, I'm joking. Like, great if you like it, obviously, but yeah, not for me. So moving on. The next book I picked up in July was The Cherokee Trail by Louis L'Amour, and this is a Western, which is incredibly outside of my genre, and I did put this in a video that I've released recently called, I think, Reading Outside My Comfort Zone. I can't remember the names of my own videos, but I will link it here. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I would. I didn't think I would be a Western sort of person at all, but really enjoyed it. And I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it is because there was such a strong female protagonist in this. So we follow Mary, and she takes over a stagecoach station, and she has to deal with outlaws and thieves. It's just well done, and it's a good time, and I really liked Mary. I kind of related to her. So yeah, I think this would be a great entry point into Westerns. It's a pretty short book as well. I read this in one sitting. So yeah, I gave this a 4.25, something like that, out of 5. Really enjoyed it. And after that I read, oh, where is it? Oh, here we are. De Profundis by Oscar Wilde. This is one that I'm not actually gonna rate this, even though I absolutely loved it, because I always feel so weird rating something that's this personal, that's someone's actual life and their actual experience, because this is a very personal letter that Oscar Wilde wrote while he was imprisoned for gross indecency, aka he was put in prison for homosexuality, homosexual acts, just terrible. But he produced this while he was in prison, and it's actually a letter to his former lover, who he partly blames for a lot of what's happened. And it also goes into the horror of being in prison and the mindset that develops from being in prison. And I found it so heartbreaking to read. There's some such beautiful writing in here, but unlike Oscar Wilde's normal style with his his kind of trademark wit and his eccentricity kind of coming through. It didn't have that. Instead, it just had his just stunning writing. So even though I'm saying I'm not rating this, I think it's pretty clear that I do rate this very highly. Okay, after this one I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and this is another short book, and it's a gothic horror, which I've been meaning to read for ages, and then I picked this one out in my TBR jar last month. So we follow two sisters in this, Mericat and her sister Constance. Their nearly entire family died in a poisoning, and Constance was kind of blamed for that, and she went to trial. Even though she wasn't convicted, the town they don't trust her. So these two sisters live in just a very isolated existence, and it really shows how people are othered and the long-lasting consequences of accusation. Even though she was ultimately acquitted, we don't know as the reader at first what happened. You do find out as the book's going on. Obviously I'm not going to say anything because of spoilers, but it's really beautifully written, and I just love anything with a gothic setting, and this one very haunting, very eerie, and the narrator as well, Mericat, she is definitely eerie. You can tell in her style that she's troubled, you can tell that she's an unreliable narrator. It has like an almost sort of folkloric chill to it, which I absolutely loved. There is a moment in this which it's so haunting that it made me audibly gasp when I was reading it. Just beautifully done, and in quite a subtle and restrained way. I really enjoyed Shirley Jackson's writing. I will say it took me a little bit just to get into it at the beginning, so I think if you pick this up and at first you're not getting into it, I would say just carry on, because by the time the character Charles comes into it, it picks up rapidly then. The other thing that I noticed in this, it's not confirmed or anything, but when I was reading it, it seemed to me as though Mericat has magical thinking, OCD. I'm diagnosed with OCD myself, so that's why I tend to pick up these sorts of things. And yeah, I thought that added just a really interesting element to it. I think I will rate this 4.5 out of 5, just because it did take me a little bit just to get into it at the start, but then I absolutely loved it. Would definitely recommend this one. The 9th book I read this month was Project Hail Mary by Andy Wier, and this is a sci-fi book, which isn't something I read a lot of, which is why it was in my video that I mentioned before about genres that are outside my comfort zone. I really, really enjoyed this book, absolutely loved it. It's about a man who, he wakes up, he doesn't know where he is, and then he remembers that he's just on a mission to save the entirety of humanity, no big deal. He thinks he's alone, and then we realise that maybe he's not as alone as he thinks he is. I don't want to give too much away, but I would say whether you're a fan of sci-fi or not, this was absolutely brilliant, and I think this could appeal to a really wide range of people. And there's a character in this called Rocky, and I just absolutely loved him. I mean, my cat's called Rocky, and I think I preferred him to my cat. Does that mean? It's a bit mean. My cat's always scratching me though, so that's probably why. Anyway, I'm going off on a right little tangent now. Yeah, I loved Rocky in this. I thought he was great, and I loved just the whole sense of humour in this. Overall, really enjoyed this one. This was like, I 4.75. It could even be a 5. I'm never sure with ratings. I find star ratings so hard, but yeah, 4.75 or a 5. The 10th book I read was The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. This is another short book. I've read quite a few like shorter books this month, aside from that 700-page Order of Scorpion one. But yeah, this one I also read for the same video because horror is not usually in my wheelhouse, although I don't know, I think it might be. I really do. I think it might be. I think I'm going to be reading more horrors just because I enjoyed the ones I read in that video so much. But yeah, this is a gothic horror, so because it had that gothic setting, I knew there'd be something to draw me in. And it is a ghost story. It is about the woman in black. And again, I can't say too much about it without giving much away, but we follow a solicitor who goes to oversee the estates of someone who has passed away, and he basically comes into contact with the woman in black, and it is so eerie. Like the first moment when she comes in, It's so creepy. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I read this in one sitting. Like I say, it's a pretty short read. I think it's 200 pages, and really enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't love was the ending. And when I had a look online about that, I'd seen that people are a little bit split on whether they liked the ending or not. I can see why it was done, but it wasn't fully for me. But, you know, a lot of people love the ending, so that doesn't mean it won't be for you if you haven't read it already. And I did rate this, I think, 4. Okay, after that one I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. I was really looking forward to this one because I loved People We Meet on Vacation and Great Big Beautiful Life. I enjoyed Funny Story. Didn't like Happy Place, but yeah, I was really looking forward to this one, and I didn't like it. I didn't. Yeah, so okay, so in this one it's described as a rom-com, which I would really challenge that description of this book because we deal with some incredibly heavy topics. I think this is more of a lit fit book. I think a lot of people would call it women's fiction. It's not a rom-com, okay? I don't know where rom-com comes from. The cover on this is misplaced, the title's misplaced. This deals a lot with grief and trauma, and she's thinking about her father's affair, her father's death. It's pretty depressing in parts, and the main character in this is depressed, and we're in her head, so it's not really a fun time, to be honest with you. Yeah, we follow her. She's called January, and the man in this is called Augustus, which, you know, January and August, sure. They're both writers, and she writes romance and he writes more literary fiction, and they basically swap what they're writing. And we all know where it's going, we all know that they're going to end up together. But yeah, I think one of the things when you're reading a romance is that you really do need to like the main characters. It's not the case with other genres, but I think if you don't like the main characters in a romance, it's not going to hit the same, and I didn't like either of them. I found them both very emotionally immature. They're just not people I want to read about, frankly. There were parts where January in this sort of just got angry for no obvious reason, and yeah, I felt very emotionally immature. Her reactions were disproportionate. I don't know, I didn't find it like fun to read about, and I was okay with Gus in this at first, and then honestly he really lost me at one specific point because he made a joke which, if I'd have been on a date with him, would have ended the date. I'm not sure it would register with everyone, and it is such a minor moment that I don't feel that it's spoilery to share. I'll tell you what it is. Basically, they're on a date together and they're playing that game where you're like, oh, I wonder what's happening in that person's life, and you make up like a little fantasy story for that person. Gus does that, and I wrote down what he said. He points at a pregnant woman and he says, she loses the baby, it's awful. And he goes on from there. For me, this felt almost triggering, having something like this used so flippantly. And don't get me wrong, this wouldn't be the case for everyone. I've had 5 pregnancy losses, very, very bad experiences with a couple of them, like life-threatening experiences. And to see something like that used flippantly, used as a joke, I can't get past that. It made me, I couldn't like Gus as a character. Like I say, if I'd been on a date with him, the date would have ended there. And you can say that that's my issue. And sure, you know, there was another thing that made me dislike Gus as well. And it was January's descriptions of him. She kept describing him as having evil eyes, like, yeah, this crooked mouth and these, like, I don't know, evil little eyes, and like it was really weird. At one point she thinks that she can see flames in your eyes, you know, because this turning into a horror story. Like she literally thinks she can see flames in his eyes, and like there's no fire around or anything like that. It's kind of weird. She even goes as far as to liken him to a predator. How is that romantic? Like, she says something like her self-preservation instinct kicks in. It makes the guy sound like he's this dangerous man. It was just really weird. And she kept calling herself, like, was it Stupid Bunny or Dumb Bunny? That was it. She kept calling herself Dumb Bunny. Like, whenever she liked him, she'd think Dumb Bunny, Dumb Bunny. And it was, I found it really weird. just weird. So yeah, the two of them, you know, I hope they're happy together, but I don't like either of them. I will say that the sense of humour in this just wasn't for me either. I mean, there are kind of like jokes in here about like dogs farting, you know what I mean? Like that's not my sense of humour at all. Like I like dry sarcasm, and oh, anything that's like almost too slapstick is just not for me, you know. There were nice moments in this book. I think there was some nice exploration of grief. I can certainly see why people like this one. I think this is just one of those cases of this book just isn't for me. But if you want something that has that exploration of grief in it and that is quite heavy for a romance, if you want like a literary fiction romance, then you might really enjoy this one. Obviously it is pretty highly rated and I didn't hate it. Like I gave this like a 2.5, which is like, it's okay, it's fine. But yeah, not what I wanted. Anyway, moving on. After that, luckily I went on to a book that I had a much better experience with, and that is Beartown by Fredrik Backman, and I picked this again in my prompt jar picks, and I'd been putting this one off because I knew how hard it was going to be for me to read about, and I felt like let's just say like enough time had passed from some events in my past that I felt like I could safely read that. I hope that doesn't sound too weird. Whatever. Yeah, basically I felt like I was going to be in the right headspace to read this now, whereas before I hadn't done. This is so beautiful. I really enjoyed this. I mean, on the surface of it, it just sounds like something I wouldn't be interested in. It's about an ice hockey town. I know nothing about ice hockey. I don't like sports apart from UFC, that's the one exception, but I don't like most sports. And so it just seems like this wouldn't have much for me, but it isn't really about the ice hockey. Basically a horrible event happens in the town, like an essay happens in the town, and it is to a teenager. Obviously I won't say who or much more than that. It shows how these boys in the ice hockey team, they are put on pedestals and hockey is put on a pedestal, and they are basically, they're taught to never to never take no for an answer and to keep pushing on all the time and all of this, and it shows the disastrous consequences of this. It was very realistically done, and I think there are bits of this that made me very angry and that really did upset me. But it's realistic. This is what happens. This is how people act. This is how people react to it. Yeah, I really tabbed this up because there are a lot of moments in here that I want to go back to, and a lot of things that I tagged just from a point of view of realism and not shying away from things. There's also just some really moving writing. I think Fredrik Backman is just a master of human emotions and of being able to display them in a way that just feels like a gut punch. Like, it's not like a restrained style of writing like some other writers have. It is like emotional gut punch. He is really good at it. This is harrowing and absolutely worth reading. Now I will say that as someone who's in my mid-30s and I've had the experiences that I have, I'm very aware of these issues. There was nothing new for me in this. Yes, it made me angry again, but I'm already fully aware of exactly how these things go down. I think this might be more impactful if perhaps you're younger or haven't had some of those experiences or some of that same exposure. But even with that, I think it's just such an important thing to be talked about. There's a lot of people who could benefit from reading this book, and a lot of people would enjoy this book, and I think it's an important book. I found this one hard to rate because I found it hard to read, but I also did enjoy it. I found like this style of writing was like a little bit younger, but then it's got some really difficult themes in here, so I don't know where you would place this. I don't know if this is maybe a new adult book. I don't know. But yeah, I would rate this probably a 4.75 out of 5, and I would say definitely give this one a try, but make sure that you're in the right headspace to do that. The 13th book I read was The Life Impossible by Matt Haig, and I've really enjoyed Matt Haig books that I've read in the past. This one just didn't hit in the same way. It was a prompt jar pick again, and it was another one that I really wanted to love, and I didn't dislike it. I did still like this book. It just wasn't up to, I don't know, his usual standards, I felt. But yes, what was nice is we follow an older protagonist in this. We follow a 72-year-old woman named Grace, and she has left a house, and she goes to Ibiza to, you know, move into this house and to try and find out what has happened to her friend and why her friend passed away, because no one really knows why she died. The way it starts out and the way it ends are completely different. Like, I didn't expect this to be quite so much in the magical realism realm, but it is. It goes quite heavy into magical realism. I don't even know how else to describe the plot because, like, it's just a bit weird. Let's just say that things aren't as they seem when she gets there, and something happens to her, and she basically, it's not a spoiler to say that she discovers that she has some powers from this. And that's where it gets a little bit more unusual, and there were moments in this that I really enjoyed, and I think I like how Matt Haig writes, I like how his brain works, like I think he's always got some good like life lessons in there. You can really tell that he's a therapist, I think, when you're reading. I enjoyed parts of it a lot, but then the actual plot kind of just fell down for me, and I didn't feel that invested in it. So I think overall this was probably about a 3.25, which still means that I did like the book. The final book that I read this month was Sina, Songstress of Rock, which is by Brandon Rapp. And Brandon Rapp is a Native American author who very kindly sent me this novella with no obligation for me to read it or review it or anything like that. But I obviously did read it, and I am going to mention it here. So this is only a short novella. It's, I think, around 110 pages, and it's split into 2 distinct arcs within that as well. It's a fantasy book, so we follow Sina, who is a rock star, but she has some magical abilities that come to the forefront in this book. And there's also a very sweet romance in it as well. I did really like Sina's character in this. I thought she was quite an empowering character, and there was a few scenes in here which I thought were really beautifully handled by the author. And I will say that the writing style there's some really beautiful lyrical prose in this. You can tell that the author is a talented writer. It was so refreshing as well to see a love story in this genre that was just really sweet and just very respectful, because I think there's a lot of toxic relationships within this genre, so I did really enjoy that. Where it fell down for me was that the tense kept shifting. So we were in present tense, and that's where I saw all of these just, yeah, really lovely prose, and then there would be an abrupt switch into present tense, particularly when dialogue came in, and it was very jarring. It kind of pulled me out of the story, unfortunately. And there's also just some dialogue that feels kind of unnatural and stilted, but I will say it's not all of it. There's some very natural dialogue, and there's some unnatural dialogue as well. I really enjoyed the first half, the first arc of the novella, and then the second arc wasn't as strong for me. The storyline in that just didn't feel as compelling as the first one. However, I did enjoy this overall, and I did enjoy the author's style of writing. I just think it needs some things kind of ironing out in it, but this is a debut novella, and I think it is impressive, and I think that this author is one to watch. Yeah, while this wasn't a favourite for me, I did still enjoy it. This was probably, again, around like a 3.25, I think, for me, and I would say I think I can see a lot of people enjoying this one, and it is available on Kindle Unlimited as well. Okay, so that is all 14 of the books that I read this month. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you agree with me or disagree with me, and what you've been reading this month, because, you know, I'm very nosy, so I do always like to know. If you liked this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to see more videos. And thanks so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!